Hi guys, it's Steph back again. I'm really sorry for the lack of updates lately. I've been really bad and just haven't got around to making a YouTube video. Um, yeah, I have no excuses apart from that I've been studying, having a bit of a break over winter, and editing things that I have been shooting really. Um, I thought today I'd make the question and answer video that I said I'd make a long time ago. In fact, I'm pretty sure I said I'd make it before Christmas, and it's now April. So, as you can see, timekeeping, not one of my best skills. One of my worst skills, for sure. So, we'll jump right in, really. There's sunset in my eyes, but it's not that sunny. But hey, I like to squint. So, question number one. These are mainly off Tumblr, because people on Tumblr have been sending me questions in for months, and I've been storing them up because I haven't got around to answering them. And a lot of them get quite similar. So yeah, these tend to get asked on Facebook as well, but yeah, I chose to whack them off Tumblr. So this is from someone called Shirley Worley, because they like Sherlock, which is a good start. Your photos are stunning and the way you edit is gorgeous. They're really lovely and perfectly capture the relationship between horse and rider. Oh, thank you. I'm aspiring to become a photographer and just starting out, getting to grips with it with my Canon. I am almost 18 and will be taking a gap year once I leave school. I am mainly subjecting my poor horses and dogs at the moment, but I wondered if you have any tips for someone right at the start. Thank you. Well, yeah, I mean, I'd mainly say just take lots and lots of photos. I don't know, you didn't say what you're planning on doing on your gap year, but when I didn't have much of a portfolio, I just offered to shoot for free. Sorry, laptop dead. For free all the time. So I'd literally text my friends like, "Hey, do you want me to take some photos?" And people are normally willing to have their photos taken with their horses. They're quite horsey people like photos. I think we all know that. So yeah, that's what I used to do. I used to go take photos, come home, edit them, post them, get people's opinions. I think the biggest tip is don't overpost things. I used to come back from a shoot, upload like 100 photos and wonder why none of them got any attention, and I found that it was a lot better to just upload 2 or 3 and spend a lot of time editing and really making those pictures worthwhile. So when you're on a shoot, really think about what you have in mind with what you're taking and get to know the people you're taking photos of, ask them what they want, because whilst it's got to be a balance, because if it's purely what you want, then they might not look comfortable or happy with the photos, but you can't just do what they want, because a lot of the time people don't know what they want. So you have to have a preconceived idea a lot of the time. So be imaginative, try things new, try things which you definitely want to do on the shoot, and then try some things which might not work, and just be happy, just be jolly, and just say, oh, this isn't working, can we try something else? And yeah, just keep going and make the most of social media, because I think it's really important for getting your name out there. I mean, before I had Facebook and stuff, I never really used to take photography very seriously. It still confuses me how I've landed in the position I'm in with photography, because I never intended to. I just took photos and enjoyed it and just kept going, really. That's my tip. Just keep going. You can't take too many photos. There's no such, well, you can overshoot at the time, but get out every day. Like, every time there's an opportunity, take your camera. I think throughout the summer, there's normally a period of 3 or 4 weeks where I normally haven't ever not taken my camera out. Like, the camera just goes everywhere. Even if it's just down the yard and you take 2 photos, just do it, because you'll regret it if you don't. It's my theory anyway. Just be on the safe side. Make sure you get those moments. Don't regret not taking photos. That's the key thing. Yeah, I don't really know what other tips. If you want to be more specific then I can answer it more specifically next time. But for now, that's what I would say, is just keep shooting. That's my biggest tip, really, for starting out. Right. Someone called Train to Win. I love your photography. I have a Nikon D50-100 and I'm still figuring it out. Are there any settings you recommend using on the camera, and any lenses worth buying? I know we don't have the same camera, but they are the same brand, so maybe they're similar a bit. Yeah, I mean, sure, like, you can use practically any Nikon lens on any Nikon body, which is great because I have a few friends who use Nikon, so we just swap. It's good. Any settings? My settings are mostly just on manual, and what you want to do for horses predominantly is if you're outside, which most of the time, oh god, that's really bad. Light balance. Low ISO, so you need to learn the controls on your camera, so that's important. If you don't, then just look up in your manual which each button does. Know your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO, and just figure out where you need to be with those. I would say low ISO, if it's a nice bright sunny day, 200, 300, 400. You don't really need to go any higher than that, I find. You want to be, my kind of rule of thumb is I always shoot at the lowest aperture possible because it means you get faster shutter speeds. So on my 70-200, that's normally 2.8, but you need to be careful because you don't want to lose depth of field. So it depends what you're shooting, I suppose. Like with the show jumping, I tend to shoot a little bit with a smaller aperture, not particularly smaller, just because otherwise sometimes half the jump's in focus and half of it isn't, and so it's better to have a little bit more space and depth of field. And then shutter speed, my general rule is try and keep it anywhere above 1/1000th of a second, because after that you do start to see it slightly more with horses, like a bit more movement, and I find over 1,000th a second you don't really see. So I mean, on a bright sunny day, if it was gloriously sunny, you could pretty much have it on I don't know, 3.5, 1/4000th per second is all my camera goes up to, and then keep the ISO low because it keeps the image cleaner and not so grainy. So that's all on manual. I mean, I started off shooting on, like every probably beginner does, on the little Running Man sports mode because you don't really know what else to do at this point. And so you think, oh yeah, that says sports, that'll do it for me. But it often doesn't, and you often end up with blurry photos. So if you are on that situation, my first step would be to advise going into the aperture priority mode, which is the one with the A, and then setting just your aperture, and then you can keep it as low as possible. And then this gives you a bit more control over your photos, and you start to learn then by watching the settings what you can do yourself, and then you can say, oh, but the aperture priority isn't quite doing it for me, so move up to manual so that you have full control. Like, the more control you have, the better, and that's quite useful. And then along with settings, especially if it's like a personal shoot for someone, always shoot in RAW. Don't do JPEG, you'll regret it. If you don't know what I'm on about, Google the difference between RAW and JPEG, or go over to my favourite person to explain it is a guy called Fro Knows Photo on YouTube. He's called Jared Poland, but he basically explains why you want to be shooting in RAW, because it gives you so much more flexibility with your photos. And yeah, I can't really talk right now because I've got like the most overexposed video going and I can see it and it's making me cringe. But I don't know how to use, I got a Mac yesterday, I don't know how to use it, is effectively what the problem is here. I wanted to use it because I thought it'd be a good idea. Probably not. Anonymous asked, advice for beginners on how to get into photography and like Photoshop. How to get into, just buy a camera or borrow a camera and just do it. Like, you can't just decide one day I'm going to drop everything and be a photographer. That's not really how it works. You have to take lots of photos and you have to get a lot of people to know about your photos and work really damn hard at your photos. And Photoshop is one of those things. I am not particularly gifted at Photoshop. It takes me forever to know where everything is, and I'm not very brave at trying new things out. So what I tended to do was look up YouTube tutorials on how to do it, which I will try and post more of myself, but I'm not very good at explaining myself. I mean, you can tell from this video that I'm not very good at explaining myself. So Yeah, with the Photoshop, I wouldn't say it's like the most vital thing, really. All my photos, I import them into Lightroom first, and in Lightroom you learn the basics of exposure and what to do to get a clean image. Photoshop's more for like enhancing an image that you've already taken, I would say. Like, a lot of people never touch Photoshop and are still amazing photographers. I do like Photoshop because I'm a bit more of an arty person, and I like to create an image. And like a lot, especially for my portraits, I would say a lot of it is about how I can make it more into art than just a photo, because I started off with a fine art background and then went into photography. So I think that's still instilled in me, like painting and stuff. I think that's where a lot of it's come from, is how to create picture. No, I'm not very explaining this very well. A picture more than a photo, if that makes any sense. Probably not. Oh gosh, how am I saying that? Matazian. Oh, I can't say that. Someone on Tumblr has asked. Oh, they're Italian. Okay, that gives me some excuse. I'm Italian, so sorry for my bad English. Usually, what are the settings for close-up portraits? I don't know how to make good close-ups. If you want, reply to me. Yeah, okay. It depends what lens I'm using. Because, hold on, 2 bare seconds. 2 bare seconds? That's not, 2 seconds, bear with me. If you've got, say, you're starting out and you've got your bog standard, this is my D90, and you've got your kit lens, then you want your setting to be on, what do you want? Manual, and you want it to be as low aperture as possible. I find a lot of my style of shooting is the same. Low aperture, low ISO, everything as low as possible. I mean, for portraits, it's not so important what your shutter speed is, as long as it's not going to give you too much blur, but they shouldn't really be moving around a huge deal, so it's not quite as vital. You don't need to be at the thousandth of a second mark. You can be more like a couple of hundred if you need to be. But whatever, it really depends on what situation you're in, what lighting you're in, where you're shooting, what just the situation is so influential on what you need to do with your camera, really. That's kind of my, oh god, I look like a ghost. That's kind of my insight on that. Oh, that's not helping. Yeah, portraits, low. I mean, if you've got a little 50mm lens, which is a fantastic lens, this costs like £90, I think, off Amazon or something like that. It's like, oh, the cheapest lens pretty much on the market. And this can shoot at f1.8, so you get a really blurry background. And it's 50mm, so it's quite good for portraits. It's got a little bit more focal length to it. And yeah, I would say this is one of the best investments you can make, because it's low cost and you can get really cool portraits with it, because you can just, and it makes you move your feet as a photographer. I think it improves you for when, because I think if you have zoom lenses, you tend to get really lazy. So I would say one of these, if you haven't got one and you're interested in taking portraits, get it, because you won't regret it. That's my theory. Next question. Do you use anything like Lightroom or Photoshop? I want to get the creamy lighting and no sun rays. But not sure how. Yeah, I do use that, both of them. Lightroom more, as I said, to adjust the file to start with. And then for Photoshop, you can paint in a lot that wasn't there, and you can remove things, and you can adjust the colours in the gradients and the creamy lighting. I think the lighting really depends on what you shot it at originally. I don't think you can just make creamy lighting. If you mean, a lot of the photos I tend to enhance my lighting by like brushing on extra light and screening it in. And then curves are really important. I always adjust the curves, and I'll probably make a video on what I do with my curves, because I think what I do is a little bit different to most people, not like hugely, just a little bit. I do an S curve, but then I make some adjustments to it, and so I guess I could show people that. I'll show people how I do like more of a lighted photo, because it's a bit hard to explain when you haven't got Photoshop up. Is basically what I'm going with here. Anonymous asked, how do you protect your camera and lens in the rain? Do you use a special product? My product cost me, I think it was about £5 from Amazon, and it is this. It's not the best, but I don't tend to shoot in the rain because I'm a bit of a fair weather shooter. Whoa. It's this. I don't know if you can see that because it's probably overexposed. And you put the camera in it and you pull the drawstring. I've tied it up because the drawstring was going in front of my lens, and you don't need a lot of white line in front of your lens. Yeah. Does the job. I mean, normally the type of photos I do, if I'm working like at an event, so say show jumping or dressage, then this comes out more, because I can't just decide that we're not going to take photos because the competitors still have to do it. So do I. So I tend to whack that on. But to be fair, the lens and body that I've got are quite water resistant. And if it gets to the point where it's hammering it down and I think my kit is going to get ruined, then I will just step back or find somewhere undercover where I can stand, because I don't want to be paying a couple of grand to replace the camera equipment that I've bought. So that's kind of my opinion on that. Yeah, so you can get better ones. I've used better ones. When I used to work for another photographer, he had like a proper case for the camera, and that was really good. And I need to get myself one of those. It's just getting around to doing it. So yeah, Amazon rain cover protector. There's just like a standard thing. It's not specifically for my camera. It's just one there. Right, oh, we've got a couple more. Pale getting healthy. That's an interesting one. I have a Canon Rebel kit lens and a 70-300 tele macro lens as well. I am not as advanced as you in photography, but hopefully I can get to that level. I can try to shoot some in RAW. I had no idea you edited your pictures. Do you have Photoshop? How do I get the sun where I want it when I take photos? Right, well, you can't really get the sun where you want it when you take photos. You have to physically move yourself. Sometimes it's really difficult because you have a backdrop you want to use and you think this is the perfect backdrop, and then the sun will become somewhere completely unuseful from where you want it. So you have to kind of make a compromise and really think about what you're doing and what your exposure is, because you don't want like a fully backlit photo and then completely unexposed subject, because that won't really get you very far. And at the same time, you don't want the sunlight blaring in your subject's face so they're squinting and everything has got harsh shadows. The best type of days I find for shooting are really overcast days, because it's like a giant softbox. Nothing's too harsh like it is on my face right now. It's got a bit better, but not much. And then you can, if you need to, go into Photoshop and mess around. And it's not what I advise doing, but I do tend to do it. It's not, strictly speaking, the best practice, but hey, we all have to make sacrifices. So I would say that would be the best thing, is to work as much as you can with what is naturally there before you go like jumping into Photoshop to try and correct something, because it never is good. You need it really there in the first place. But yeah, I can't really move the sun. I would love to. That would be useful, but I can't do it. Sorry. RFC photography. What's the best way to get noticed in doing photography? I already answered this one, so I'll read out my reply and hopefully it won't be too bad. I just put work hard. You don't really get noticed. You work your way up from scratch. You start taking photos for nothing, researching and practicing, and progress from there. Yeah, I still kind of stand by that. Research. Like, I don't think people understand how much time I spend learning about photography. I spend a good couple of hours, possibly maybe an hour on average a day, researching how other people have taken their photos. I go on Tumblr, I go on YouTube. YouTube is a really good one, I find, because you can walk through it with the photographer what they're doing. I've downloaded guides from, like, photography guides from a website called BP4U. And then you could just download the guides. And normally they have some really good sales on for like it's like $20, so whatever that is in pounds. I just kind of clicked OK through PayPal, and it will tell you how to pose people, how to edit the photos afterwards, and I find it really useful to do that. Really, just keep going. Like, I definitely didn't, the first few photos I took were horrendous. They were blurry, out of focus, poorly composed. So please, if you're looking at my photos like, hey, I want to be like her, but I'm never going to, so I will quit. Don't do that, because you'll never get anywhere. You have to start. I will dig out some of my old photos and put them in this video so you can see what I am on about. Like, they were horrendous. So please don't give up. One here is about horse jumping, and I think I've covered that. As fast as shutter speed as you can. Get out of the pre-set modes. Get into aperture, if not manual mode. That is my biggest tip for sports. I think I don't really know what else to cover in this, and as you can probably tell, I'm not the best at talking to a camera, and I have no idea how to work this Mac, so this video might not make it onto YouTube for about a couple of years or something. I don't know, maybe. So if there are any questions, then please let me know, because I want to help people, because everyone's so lovely to me that I feel like I should try and help people back. If you don't follow me on Tumblr, then go do that. I'll put a link in the box thing. But if not, it's called, my Tumblr address is stephbirchphotos@tumblr.com. It's quite simple. I hope that's the right one. I think so. And then follow me on Facebook if you don't, which is @stephbirchphotos. Again, it's not very imaginative. And please subscribe on YouTube, because I really appreciate it. And I can't believe I've got 1,000 subscribers already, because I had no idea that people actually liked watching these videos. Oh, it's funny. It's funny. I'm just not very good with social media, but I'm trying to be. Let me know what kind of video you want me to do next. Like, do you want me to look at some people's photos from like what you've shot and say what I think about it? Do you want me to upload another Photoshop thing? The last one I don't think was very good, so I'll try harder. Or Lightroom. And like how I shoot at the time. I don't know. What do people want? yeah. I'm gonna go now.